The library was a sanctuary of silence, the kind that wraps around you like a warm blanket on a chilly night. I found comfort in its embrace, surrounded by dusty tomes and the faint smell of old paper. The afternoon sun filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. It was my favorite spot in the school, a place where I could escape the chaos of teenage life and lose myself in the pages of fiction and history. But today felt different. The air was heavy, almost electric, as I flipped through the pages of my history textbook. I tried to focus on the words, but a strange sensation tugged at my attention, pulling me away from the present. It started as a faint whisper, barely audible, but it grew louder, weaving through the silence of the library. I paused, tilting my head, straining to hear. "Hello!" I called out, my voice echoing slightly in the quiet room. No response. I shook my head, convinced I was imagining things. Perhaps it was just my mind playing tricks on me after hours of studying. I returned my focus to the book, but the whispers persisted, more insistent this time. "Sarah?" The sound sent a chill down my spine. My heart raced as I slowly stood up, my instincts urging me to investigate the source of the voice. I glanced around, but the library was empty, save for the shadows that danced in the corners. I took a deep breath and began to walk toward the back of the room, where the whispers seemed to be emanating from the darkened corner, cloaked in obscurity. Each step felt heavier than the last, a sense of foreboding washing over me. As I drew closer, I could see a faint glow, almost ethereal, flickering like a candle in the darkness. The whispers grew clearer, now sounding like a mournful song, luring me closer. "Come closer!" I hesitated, a part of me screaming to turn back, to run out of the library and never look back. But curiosity won over fear, and I stepped into the dim light. My breath caught in my throat as I finally saw him. A figure, translucent and shimmering, standing just a few feet away. He was a young man, perhaps around my age, with tousled dark hair and eyes that sparkled like distant stars but were filled with profound sadness. He looked almost like a reflection in a broken mirror, his features shifting in and out of focus. Who are you?" I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. "I am Ethan," he replied, his voice soft yet filled with an echo of despair. "I've been waiting for someone to hear me." "Waiting for someone? Why?" I took a cautious step forward, drawn to him, despite the fear that lurked in my mind. "My soul is trapped," he explained, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. "I cannot move on until the truth of my death is revealed." I swallowed hard, my heart racing. "What happened to you?" Ethan paused, his expression shifting from sorrow to something more profound, as if he was reliving a painful memory. "There was a fire, a tragedy that took my life, along with many others." He looked away, as if the weight of his memories was too heavy to bear. "Fire? I've heard whispers about it," I said, my curiosity piqued. "But no one talks about it. It's like a ghost in the history of this school." "It was no accident," he continued, his voice growing stronger, fueled by the urgency of his story. "Rivalries, jealousy, it all led to that night. I was just a pawn in a game that spiraled out of control. I felt a connection to Ethan, an inexplicable bond that transcended the boundaries of life and death. "What can I do to help you?" I asked, my determination solidifying. "Find the truth," he urged, his voice trembling with emotion. "Unravel the secrets that bind me to this place. There are those who still carry the guilt of that night, and they need to be confronted." "I promise," I said, my heart racing with a mix of fear and excitement. "I'll help you find justice." Ethan's expression softened, a flicker of hope igniting in his eyes. "Thank you, Sarah. You are the first to listen. Perhaps you can be my voice." As I stood there, staring into the depths of his sorrowful eyes, I felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. I didn't know how I would uncover the truth, but I knew I had to try. With each passing second, the weight of the world seemed to lift just a little, as if Ethan's spirit was finally being acknowledged. But as he began to fade, I felt a pang of panic. Wait, don't go. How will I know what to do? Follow the whispers, he replied, his voice becoming a mere echo in the vast library. They will guide you to the answers you seek. And with that, he vanished, leaving me standing alone in the library, surrounded by shadows. I felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. I had just encountered a ghost, a soul trapped in a world of sorrow, and I was determined to help him find peace. Taking a deep breath, I gathered my thoughts. I needed to talk to Lucas and Mia. They had to know what happened. I couldn't do this alone. I needed my friends by my side. As I left the library, the weight of Ethan's story lingered in my mind. I felt a responsibility to uncover the truth, not only for him but for all those who had suffered because of that fire. The world outside felt different now, the colors more vibrant, the air charged with possibility. Sarah, there you are, Lucas called out as I stepped into the bustling hallway. He was leaning against a locker, his usual carefree smile replaced with concern. We were starting to worry. You've been in there for ages. I know, I replied, my heart racing as I debated how much to reveal. I need to talk to you and Mia. It's important. Lucas raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Okay, what's going on? I glanced around, making sure no one was eavesdropping. Can we go somewhere private? Please. Sure, he said, straightening up. Let's head to the art room. It should be empty. Once inside the art room, I closed the door behind us, my heart pounding in my chest. Mia was already there, sketching something on a canvas. She looked up, her expression shifting from concentration to curiosity. What's up, Sarah? She asked, setting down her brush. You look like you've seen a ghost. Actually, I think I did, I said, my voice trembling with urgency. I need you both to listen to me. It's about the fire and a boy named Ethan. Lucas and Mia exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of confusion and intrigue. I took a deep breath and began to recount my encounter in the library, the whispers, the figure, and his tragic story. When I finished, the silence in the room was palpable. Mia's eyes widened in disbelief. Are you serious? A ghost? In our school? I know it sounds crazy, I replied, my voice steadying, but I felt a connection to him. He needs our help to uncover the truth about what happened. Lucas leaned against a nearby table, his expression thoughtful. What if it's dangerous? What if we're messing with something we shouldn't? Mia, you're the one who always says the truth needs to come out, I urged, turning to her. This is our chance to do something meaningful. We can't let Ethan's story fade away like everyone else. I don't know, Mia hesitated, biting her lip. Please, I pleaded, desperation creeping into my voice. I can't do this alone. We need to investigate what really happened. We owe it to him. After a moment of silence, Mia nodded slowly, her resolve building. Okay, I'm in, but we need to be careful. We have no idea what we're dealing with. Agreed, Lucas added, his adventurous spirit shining through. Let's figure this out together. As we stood there, united by a newfound purpose, I felt a glimmer of hope. We were going to uncover the truth behind Ethan's tragic fate, and maybe, just maybe, we could help his spirit find peace. I sat at my desk in my dimly lit bedroom, the soft hum of the lamp providing just enough light to illuminate the pages of my notebook. My heart raced as I replayed the events from the library in my mind. The whispers, the chilling presence of Ethan, and the weight of his tragic story felt heavy on my chest. I knew I had to tell my closest friends, Lucas and Mia, about my encounter. They would understand, at least I hoped they would. The next day, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I gathered my courage and sent a group message to Lucas and Mia. Hey, can we meet at my place tonight? I need to talk about something important. I watched the three little dots dance on my screen, indicating that they were typing back. Moments later, I received a reply from Lucas filled with enthusiasm. Count me in. I love surprises. Mia's response was a bit more cautious. Is everything okay, Sarah? When they arrived, I could feel the tension in the air. I led them to my room, where the walls were lined with bookshelves and the scent of lavender filled the space. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. Guys, something happened yesterday in the library. I began, my voice trembling slightly. I think I encountered a ghost. Lucas's eyes sparkled with excitement. A ghost? This is going to be epic. Tell me everything. He leaned forward, practically bouncing in his seat. Mia, on the other hand, raised an eyebrow, her skepticism evident. Sarah, are you sure you weren't just imagining things? Ghosts aren't real. I shook my head, determined to convince her. No, Mia, I swear. I saw him, a boy named Ethan. He told me his soul is trapped here because of a fire that happened in the school. We have to investigate what happened. Mia crossed her arms, skepticism still etched on her face. This sounds like a horror movie plot. What if it's dangerous? Come on, Mia, Lucas interjected, his excitement contagious. This is our chance to uncover a real mystery. We can't pass this up. Mia sighed, clearly torn. Okay, but we need to be careful. I don't want to end up in a creepy situation. After our discussion, we decided to visit the school that very night. The plan was set. We would explore the site of the fire and see if we could find any clues about Ethan's tragic story. The thrill of the unknown buzzed through me, but a nagging sense of fear lingered at the back of my mind. As night fell, we met at the school entrance, the old brick building looming ominously against the moonlit sky. Armed with flashlights and a mix of courage and trepidation, we pushed the doors open, the creaking sound echoing through the empty halls. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and I could feel my heart racing as we stepped inside. Stay close, I whispered, my voice barely above a murmur. We turned on our flashlights, the beams cutting through the darkness, illuminating the dust motes floating in the air. As we walked deeper into the building, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Look over there, Lucas exclaimed, pointing to a series of strange symbols drawn on the wall. I stepped closer, examining the markings closely. They looked like a mix of old graffiti and some kind of ritualistic drawings. What do you think this means? I asked, my voice tinged with curiosity and fear. Mia shivered slightly, glancing around the dimly lit corridor. This place gives me the creeps. We should be careful not to disturb anything. Come on, Mia. This is amazing, Lucas replied, his enthusiasm unwavering. We might find something that connects to Ethan's story. As we continued our exploration, I felt a chill run down my spine. The air was heavy with an indescribable energy, and I could sense the weight of the past pressing down on us. I glanced at my friends, their faces illuminated by the flashlights, a mix of excitement and fear mirrored in their expressions. Let's check the old storage room, I suggested, leading the way. It was said to be the site of the fire's origin, and my intuition told me we might find something important there. As we approached the door, I hesitated, my heart pounding. The handle felt cold under my touch, and I took a deep breath before pushing it open. The room was filled with old furniture covered in dust, remnants of a bygone era. My flashlight beam danced across the room, revealing broken chairs and stacked boxes. Over there, Lucas pointed to a pile of old newspapers in the corner. Let's see if there's anything about the fire. We gathered around as Lucas began sifting through the yellowed pages. Look at this, he exclaimed, holding up a newspaper clipping. It talks about a fire that broke out during a school event. Apparently, there were some rivalries between students that escalated. Mia's expression shifted from skepticism to concern. Rivalries? What kind of rivalries? I leaned closer, my curiosity piqued. Lucas continued to read aloud. Witnesses reported seeing fights break out moments before the fire started. Some students were trapped inside, and it led to a tragic loss of life. He looked up, his eyes wide. This is really serious. I exchanged worried glances with Mia. Maybe Ethan's spirit is tied to this because of those rivalries. He might be seeking justice for what happened. Mia nodded, her previous doubts fading. We need to dig deeper. If we can find out more about Ethan's story, maybe we can help him. As we continued to search the room, I felt a strange sensation wash over me. It was as if the air grew thicker, charged with an energy I couldn't explain. I glanced at my friends, their expressions mirroring my own unease. "Do you guys feel that?" I asked quietly. Lucas nodded slowly, his enthusiasm dampened. "Yeah, it's like something is watching us." I shivered at the thought, but I pushed it aside. We were on a mission, and I couldn't let fear derail us. "We need to find out what happened that night," I urged, my voice steady. "If Ethan is still here, he deserves to have his story told." With newfound determination, we decided to split up and scour the rest of the building for more evidence. I could feel the weight of the past surrounding me as I wandered down the darkened halls, the silence punctuated only by the sound of our footsteps echoing off the walls. As I turned a corner, I stumbled upon a small, forgotten classroom. The door creaked open, revealing dusty desks and old textbooks strewn about. I stepped inside, my flashlight illuminating the room's neglected corners. It felt eerily quiet, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone. Suddenly, a chill swept through the room, and I felt a presence behind me. I turned quickly, my heart racing, but there was nothing there. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. "You're just being paranoid, Sarah," I whispered to myself. I began to search through the old desks, hoping to find something useful. As I rifled through the papers, I found a small, leather-bound notebook tucked away at the back of one of the drawers. My heart raced as I opened it, revealing a collection of sketches and notes. It looked like a diary, and as I flipped through the pages, I realized it belonged to Ethan. "Wow, this is incredible," I murmured, my fingers tracing the delicate sketches of students and the school. But as I read the words written in his neat handwriting, my heart sank. Ethan had documented the events leading up to the fire, detailing the rivalries and the friendships that had fallen apart. I heard footsteps approaching and quickly shoved the diary into my backpack, my heart racing. Lucas and Mia entered, their expressions eager. "Did you find anything?" Mia asked, her eyes bright with curiosity. I nodded, my mind racing with the implications of what I had read. "Yes, I think I found Ethan's diary. It has details about the fire and the students involved." "That's amazing," Lucas exclaimed. "We have to read it together. This could be the key to understanding what happened." I agreed, feeling a sense of urgency. The pieces were starting to fit together, and I knew we had a long night ahead of us. But as we made our way back through the school, the air grew heavier, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. The old library was my sanctuary, a place where I could escape the chaos of high school life. It was dimly lit, with shadows creeping along the walls like whispers of ancient secrets. The scent of dust and aged paper filled the air, wrapping around me like a comforting blanket as I sat at a table, surrounded by towering shelves filled with forgotten tomes. I had my textbooks open, but my mind was elsewhere, drifting through the realms of thought until it happened. A faint rustling sound broke the silence, a whisper that seemed to curl around me, beckoning me from the farthest corner of the room. I paused, straining to hear it more clearly, trying to decipher the words. It was as if the very books were alive, sharing their stories with me. I felt a shiver run down my spine, an inexplicable pull toward the source of the sound. I closed my textbook and stood up, curiosity overcoming my hesitation. As I moved deeper into the library, the whispers grew louder, swirling around me like an unseen tide. I followed the sound, my heart racing as I rounded a corner and stepped into a shadowy alcove. That's when I saw him, a figure standing just beyond the reach of the dim light. At first, I thought it was just a trick of my imagination, a figment of my overactive mind. But as I stepped closer, the spectral form materialized before me. He was a young man, perhaps a few years older than me, with sorrowful eyes that seemed to hold the weight of 1,000 regrets. His features were delicate, almost ethereal, and I felt an overwhelming sense of sadness radiating from him. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words caught in my throat. "Who are you?" I finally managed to ask, my voice trembling slightly. "I am Ethan," he replied. his voice soft yet echoing in the silence. "I'm afraid I'm trapped here." "Trapped? What do you mean?" I asked, a mix of fear and curiosity swirling within me. He sighed, a sound filled with longing. "My soul is bound to this school. I cannot move on because of what happened here. A tragedy that stole my life too soon." His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken pain. I could feel my heart racing as I tried to process what he was saying. "What happened?" I pressed, needing to understand. Ethan's expression darkened as he began to recount his story. There was a fire, a terrible fire that consumed the school. It was a night filled with laughter and rivalry, but it turned into chaos. I tried to save my friends, but I was too late. The flames took everything from me. His eyes glistened with unshed tears, and I felt a pang of empathy for this lost soul. As he spoke, I felt an inexplicable connection to him, as if our fates were intertwined. I wanted to know more about the tragedy, about the lives that had been shattered that night. "I need to find out what happened. Please, tell me everything." Ethan nodded slowly, the weight of his sorrow evident in his gaze. "You must understand that the past is not easily uncovered. There are secrets buried deep within these walls, and not everyone is willing to face the truth." I took a deep breath, determination flooding my veins. "I will find the truth, Ethan. Promise. I won't let your story fade away." With that promise echoing in my heart, I left the library, my mind racing with questions and the beginnings of a plan. I needed to talk to my friends, Lucas and Mia. They had to know about Ethan and the tragedy that had ensnared him. I made my way home, thoughts swirling around in my head like autumn leaves caught in a gust of wind. Later that evening, I gathered Lucas and Mia in my living room, the atmosphere charged with anticipation. "You guys won't believe what happened to me today," I started, my voice barely containing my excitement. "What is it?" Lucas asked, leaning forward, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. "I met a ghost," I declared, watching their expressions shift from skepticism to intrigue. Mia raised an eyebrow, crossing her arms. "Are you serious, Sarah? A ghost?" "Yes, his name is Ethan, and he told me he's stuck in the school because of a fire that happened years ago. We need to help him." I felt a surge of urgency as I spoke, the weight of Ethan's sorrow pressing on me. "Help a ghost? How exactly do you plan to do that?" Mia questioned, her tone cautious. "I don't know yet, but we need to investigate. There must be records or something about the fire," I replied, my mind racing with possibilities. Lucas grinned, his adventurous spirit igniting. "Count me in. This sounds like the perfect mystery to solve." "Okay, but we have to be careful," Mia warned, her concern evident. "What if we disturb something we shouldn't?" "We'll be fine," I said, trying to reassure her. "We just need to stick together and stay focused." That night, we decided to visit the school after dark, armed with flashlights and our growing sense of determination. As we approached the building, the shadows loomed larger, and the air felt thick with anticipation. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the fear mingling with excitement. "Are we really doing this?" Mia asked, her voice a whisper as we stood at the entrance, the heavy door creaking open. "Yes," I replied firmly, my resolve hardening. "For Ethan." Inside, the school was eerily quiet, the only sound being the faint rustle of our footsteps against the floor. We made our way through the dimly lit halls, the beam of our flashlights cutting through the darkness. As we reached the spot where the fire had occurred, I felt a chill run down my spine, as though the very walls were holding their breath. "Look at this," Lucas said, pointing to strange symbols etched into the walls. They were unfamiliar yet oddly compelling, as if they were remnants of a long-forgotten ritual. "What do you think they mean?" Mia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know, but I have a feeling they're connected to what happened here," I replied, my mind racing with the implications. As we continued our exploration, I couldn't shake the sense that we were being watched. The air felt heavy, charged with an energy that sent shivers down my spine. "Do you guys feel that?" I asked, glancing around nervously. "Feel what?" Lucas replied, But even as he spoke, I could see the uncertainty flickering in his eyes. The air, it's different, I murmured, my heart racing. Like something's waiting. We pressed on, determined to uncover the secrets of the past. Our next stop was the archives, a dusty room filled with old records and newspapers. I felt a thrill of anticipation as we entered, the musty smell of paper filling my nostrils. We began sifting through the piles, searching for anything related to the fire. Here, Mia exclaimed, holding up a faded newspaper clipping. Look at this. I rushed over to her side, my heart pounding as I read the headline. Tragic fire claims lives of students. The article detailed the incident, mentioning the rivalry between different groups of students. I could feel the weight of history pressing down on us as we read on. This is it? I breathed, excitement bubbling within me. This is what we need. As we dug deeper, we discovered more articles and survivor accounts, each revealing the tangled web of emotions and rivalries that had contributed to the tragedy. The connections were becoming clearer, and I felt a growing urgency to piece together Ethan's story. Suddenly, the door creaked, and an elderly figure appeared in the threshold. It was Mr. Thompson, a teacher who had been at the school during the fire. His presence brought a sense of gravity to the room. "What are you children doing here?" he asked, his voice stern yet curious. "We're researching the fire that happened years ago," I replied, trying to sound confident. "We want to know what really happened." Mr. Thompson's expression softened as he stepped further into the room. "That was a dark time for our school," he said, his voice heavy with memory. "Many promises were made that night, and many were broken." "What do you mean?" Lucas asked, leaning closer. "There were rivalries, conflicts that escalated beyond control. Some students made promises to protect one another, but when the fire broke out, those promises were forgotten," Mr. Thompson explained, his eyes clouded with regret. "I fear that some of those promises still linger, binding restless spirits to this place." I glanced at my friends, feeling a chill run down my spine. Ethan's story was tied to these broken promises, and I knew we had to dig deeper. "Do you think Ethan is one of those restless spirits?" asked. Mr. Thompson nodded slowly. "It's possible. If he is indeed seeking justice, it's because he never received it in life." As we continued to talk, I felt a growing tension within myself. The pressure to be accepted by the popular crowd at school weighed heavily on my mind, pulling me away from my mission. I tried to push those thoughts aside, but they lingered, gnawing at my conscience. I had to stay focused on Ethan and the truth we were uncovering. "Sarah, are you okay?" Mia asked, noticing my distant expression. "Yeah, I'm fine," I lied, forcing a smile. But inside, I felt torn between two worlds, the world of my friends and the haunting pull of Ethan's story. The air in the library was thick with dust and the scent of aged paper. I sat alone at a table, surrounded by towering shelves filled with books that seemed to whisper secrets of their own. The dim lighting cast long shadows across the room, and despite my attempts to focus on my homework, an unsettling feeling crept over me. It started as a soft, barely audible sound, like a breeze rustling through the leaves, but it quickly transformed into a series of distinct whispers. Curiosity piqued. I pushed my chair back and stood up, my heart racing with a mix of excitement and dread. The whispers were coming from the far corner of the library, a place shrouded in darkness. I hesitated for a moment, my mind racing with thoughts of ghosts and urban legends, but something compelled me to move forward. As I approached the shadowy corner, the air grew colder, and I could feel a strange energy swirling around me. Suddenly, a figure materialized before my eyes. A young man, pale and translucent, stood there with an expression of deep sadness etched on his face. His eyes, a haunting shade of blue, seemed to pierce right through me. "Who are you?" I managed to stammer, my voice barely above a whisper. "I am Ethan," he replied, his voice echoing softly in the quiet library. "I'm trapped here, bound to this place by a tragedy that occurred many years ago." I felt a chill run down my spine as I listened to him speak. "What happened to you?" I asked, unable to tear my gaze away from his sorrowful eyes. Ethan took a deep breath, the kind that seemed to resonate with a heavy burden. "There was a fire," he said slowly, "a devastating fire that took my life and the lives of many others. I was just a student like you, but the events that led to that night, they were filled with anger and betrayal." As he recounted the tale of the fire, I felt a connection to him, as if I could almost feel the weight of his sorrow pressing down on me. "You need to tell me more," I urged. "I want to help you." The shadows around us seemed to pulse with his pain, and I could see the flicker of memories in his eyes. Friends laughing, a school dance, and then the chaos of flames and screams. "I can't move on until the truth is known," he said, desperation creeping into his voice. "There are secrets buried in this school, and they must be uncovered." That night, sleep eluded me as I lay in bed, Ethan's sorrowful face haunting my thoughts. I felt an overwhelming urge to uncover the truth behind his tragic fate. The next day at school, I gathered my courage and called my friends, Lucas and Mia, over to my house. I needed their help. I couldn't do this alone. "Guys, you won't believe what happened to me last night," I said, my voice shaky as we sat in my living room. The sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating their curious faces. I recounted my encounter with Ethan, the ghost of a boy whose life had been cut short by a terrible fire. Lucas leaned forward, eyes wide with excitement. "This is amazing. We have to investigate. Just think of all the mysteries we could uncover." His enthusiasm was contagious, but Mia remained skeptical, her brow furrowed in concern. "Are you sure this is a good idea, Sarah? Ghosts and tragedies. What if we stir something up that we can't control?" she cautioned, biting her lip. I knew she was right to worry, but the thought of leaving Ethan trapped in limbo gnawed at my conscience. "We have to try, Mia," I implored. "He deserves peace, and if we can help him find it, then we have to. We can't just ignore it." After some discussion, we decided to visit the school that very night. Armed with flashlights and an abundance of courage, we stepped into the darkened hallways, our hearts racing with each creak of the floorboards. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and I could feel the weight of the past pressing down on us as we approached the site of the fire. As we entered the main hall, the air shifted, and I caught sight of strange symbols etched into the walls. They seemed to pulse with energy, and a shiver ran down my spine. "What do you think these mean?" I whispered, feeling a sense of foreboding. Lucas examined the symbols closely. "They look like some sort of warning," he said, his voice low. "Maybe these are connected to whatever happened here." Mia shivered beside me. "We should probably stick together," she urged, her eyes wide with fear. "This place gives me the creeps." I nodded, feeling the same unease. "Let's just focus on finding out what happened. We'll figure this out together." As we continued our investigation, we stumbled upon the school archives, a dusty room filled with old newspapers and documents. My heart raced as I rifled through the files, searching for any mention of the tragic fire. It didn't take long before we found a series of newspaper clippings detailing the events of that fateful night. "Look at this," I said, pointing to an article dated back to the year of the fire. "It talks about the rivalry between two groups of students. There were accusations and fights leading up to the incident." Mia leaned over to read. "This is intense," she murmured. "It sounds like there was a lot of animosity between them. Maybe this is what kept Ethan trapped here." As we delved deeper into the archives, we discovered the account of a professor who had witnessed the fire. We arranged to meet him, hoping he could shed more light on the situation. His office was filled with books and artifacts, a testament to his long career at the school. As we recounted the events of that night, the professor's expression grew somber. "There were promises made back then," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "Promises that were never kept. Many students swore to look out for one another, to stand together against the rivalries that divided them. But those promises were broken, and it cost lives." I felt a pang of guilt as I listened. "Do you think that's why Ethan is still here?" I asked. "Because of the unfulfilled promises?" The professor nodded slowly. "It's possible, Sometimes the weight of unresolved guilt can bind a soul to this world. If there are injustices that have never been addressed, they may seek resolution. As we left the professor's office, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to uncover. The pressure to fit in with the popular crowd weighed heavily on me, and I found myself distracted by thoughts of acceptance and social status. But every time I was tempted to focus on that, I thought of Ethan and the pain he carried. I needed to keep my priorities straight, but the pull of high school politics was hard to resist. The days passed, and the tension among us grew. Lucas was passionate about uncovering the truth, while Mia seemed more cautious, often questioning our motives. One evening, after a particularly heated discussion about our next steps, Lucas revealed something that shook me to my core. "I have to tell you both something," he said, his tone serious. "My brother was involved in the rivalry back then. He was part of that group of students." Stunned silence filled the room as we processed his words. "What do you mean?" Mia asked, her eyes wide. "He was one of the students who made those promises," Lucas continued. "But things spiraled out of control and he never talked about it. I think he carries a lot of guilt, just like Ethan." The revelation hit me like a brick. I could see how intertwined their stories were. "Lucas, do you think Ethan might be seeking revenge? Or maybe he's trying to expose the truth about what happened?" I asked. Lucas looked conflicted. "I don't know. But if Ethan is seeking justice for what happened, then it's possible he might be angered by my brother's involvement." Mia shifted uncomfortably. "This is getting too complicated. I feel like we're in over our heads." As we sat in silence, I realized how fragile our friendship had become. The weight of the past was not just Ethan's burden. It was becoming ours as well. Just then, Mia stood up abruptly, her expression determined. "I need to do some investigating on my own. I can't shake the feeling that there's more to this story. I'll find something that could help us." Before we could respond, she left the room, leaving Lucas and me in stunned silence. I felt a sense of foreboding settle over us as I wondered what Mia might uncover alone. We had come together to help Ethan, but now it seemed like the very foundations of our friendship were crumbling under the pressure of the past. As I sat alone in the dimly lit library of my school, the faint glow of the desk lamp illuminated the dusty pages of the ancient books surrounding me. The air was thick with the scent of old paper, and the only sound was the quiet rustle of pages turning. The atmosphere felt eerie, almost alive, as if the shadows themselves were whispering secrets. I tried to focus on my studies, but the unsettling feeling gnawed at me. That's when I first heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible whisper, drifting through the air like a ghostly breeze. It seemed to come from a dark corner of the library, where the light barely reached. My heart raced as I felt an inexplicable pull toward the sound. Intrigued and slightly terrified, I set my books aside and stood up, my feet moving almost of their own accord. As I approached the source of the whispers, the shadows seemed to deepen, wrapping around me like a shroud. I squinted into the darkness, my pulse quickening with each step. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the gloom, and I stumbled back, gasping. It was a young man, seemingly no older than myself, with sad, ethereal eyes that seemed to pierce through me. "Who are you?" I managed to stammer, my voice trembling. "I'm Ethan," he replied softly, his voice echoing in the stillness. "I've been waiting for someone to find me." Confusion washed over me. Waiting for someone? Why? "My soul is trapped here," Ethan explained, his gaze filled with sorrow. "I cannot move on because of what happened, because of the fire." A chill ran down my spine. My mind raced back to the stories I had heard about the school's dark past, the tragic fire that had claimed lives and left scars on the community. What happened? I asked, my curiosity overpowering my fear. Ethan's expression grew somber. It was a night filled with chaos. Rivalries, jealousy, and mistakes led to the flames. I was just a bystander, caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. My friends, they promised to save me, but they didn't. They left me behind. His words struck a chord deep within me, igniting a sense of connection I couldn't explain. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, feeling the weight of his pain. I need to know more. I need to understand what happened. The next day, I called my closest friends, Lucas and Mia, over to my house. The three of us had been inseparable since childhood, but this was different. I had to share my encounter with Ethan, the ghost who had revealed his tragic fate to me. When they arrived, I wasted no time. "You guys won't believe what happened to me in the library," I blurted out, my words tumbling over one another in my excitement. Lucas's eyes lit up with curiosity. "What is it? Did you find some cool book?" "Not exactly," I replied, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I saw a ghost. His name is Ethan, and he's trapped here because of the fire that happened years ago. We have to investigate." Mia's brows furrowed in concern. "Sarah, are you sure you're not just imagining things? Ghosts aren't real." "No, Mia, I know what I saw," I insisted, my heart pounding with urgency. "Ethan needs our help." Lucas grinned, his adventurous spirit ignited. "This sounds epic. Let's do it. We could totally be like ghost hunters." Mia sighed, her skepticism still evident. "I don't know, guys. What if we get in trouble or something? This could be dangerous." "We'll be careful," I reassured her, though I felt the flutter of fear in my own stomach. "We can go to the school tonight and check it out. We have to see the place where it happened." That night, armed with flashlights and a sense of trepidation, we made our way to the school. The moonlight cast eerie shadows on the pavement as we approached the entrance. I tried to ignore the knot in my stomach, focusing instead on the mission ahead. As we stepped inside, the air felt charged with an otherworldly energy. The beam of my flashlight danced across the walls, illuminating strange symbols etched into the paint. "What are these?" Lucas wondered, tracing a finger over one of the sigils. "I don't know," I replied, my heart racing, "but they look old and weird. Maybe they're connected to the fire," Mia suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. "We should take pictures and see if we can find out more." As we explored the dark corridors, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching us. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and I began to wonder if we had made a mistake coming here. But the thought of Ethan, trapped and alone, spurred me on. We made our way to the archives, where old files and newspapers were stored. The musty smell enveloped us as we began digging through the stacks. My fingers brushed against a brittle newspaper clipping from years ago, detailing the fire and its aftermath. "Look at this," I exclaimed, holding it up for the others to see. Lucas leaned in closer, squinting at the faded text. "It says here that there were rivalries between the students leading up to the fire. This could be important." Mia shuffled through the papers, her face pale. "Listen to this. Survivors mention promises that were never kept. People they thought would save them but didn't. What if this is why Ethan is still here?" The weight of her words settled heavily in the air. I felt a mixture of guilt and determination. As we pieced together the fragments of the past, I couldn't help but feel the pressure of my own life outside this investigation. The desire to fit in with the popular crowd at school gnawed at me, distracting me from the mission at hand. I could sense the tension rising among us, especially with Mia's unease. Days passed and our investigation deepened. But as the secrets of the past unfolded, so did the cracks in our friendship. Lucas had a revelation of his own, one that shocked us both. "My brother was involved in that rivalry," he confessed one afternoon, his voice low. "He was part of the group that contributed to what happened." "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart racing. "How? Why didn't you tell us before?" Lucas looked torn. "I didn't want to drag you both into it. It's complicated. But I think Ethan might be seeking revenge for what happened. Could all be connected." Mia's expression shifted from skepticism to concern. "We need to be careful. We don't know if Ethan is angry or just lost." Feeling the pressure of the situation, I suggested we take a break to clear our heads. But while I tried to focus on my social life, the guilt of neglecting Ethan's plight weighed heavily on me. I could sense Mia pulling away, feeling sidelined as Lucas and I delved deeper into the mystery. Then, one evening, Mia came bursting into my room, her face pale. "You won't believe what I found," she exclaimed, clutching a worn leather-bound diary. "It's Ethan's." "Where did you get that?" I asked, astonished. "I found it hidden in the archives," she replied, her eyes wide with excitement. "It's filled with details about the fire and his life. We have to read it together." We gathered in my room, and as she opened the diary, the words seemed to leap off the page. It detailed the events leading up to the fire, names of friends, secrets, and the weight of unfulfilled promises. The more we read, the more connected I felt to Ethan's story. But as we delved deeper, an unsettling feeling crept over us. It was as if we were being watched. Shadows flickered in the corners of my vision, and strange noises echoed around us. I glanced at Mia and Lucas, their expressions mirroring my unease. "Do you feel that?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "Yeah," Lucas replied, his eyes darting around the room. "It's like something is here with us." As the tension escalated, I felt my guilt rise to the surface. I had been so wrapped up in my desire to fit in, to be part of something bigger, that I had neglected the very real suffering of Ethan. I could sense the shift in the atmosphere, and it was suffocating. "Mia, I'm sorry," I said, my voice breaking. "I've been so focused on my own issues that I forgot why we started this investigation in the first place. Ethan needs us." Mia looked at me, hurt and frustrated. "You think you're the only one feeling that? This is important to all of us. We can't just treat it like a game." The argument escalated, and I felt the weight of our friendship hanging by a thread. I knew I had to do something to make it right, not just for Ethan, but for us. The journey ahead was uncertain, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on the brink of something significant. The truth was out there, waiting to be uncovered, and it was time for us to face it together. The air was heavy with tension as I stormed away from Lucas and Mia. My heart raced, and the pounding in my chest echoed my frustration. "They just don't get it?" I muttered to myself, the library's shadows enveloping me like a shroud. I had to find answers about Ethan, answers that seemed to slip through my fingers like sand. As I walked the dimly lit corridors of the school, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions. I could still hear the echoes of our argument ringing in my ears. Lucas had insisted that we focus on our investigation, while Mia had grown increasingly distant, feeling sidelined. But I felt an urgent pull towards Ethan, an otherworldly connection that demanded to be explored. "Why can't they see?" I whispered to the silence, pushing open the heavy wooden door that led into the main hallway. The chill of the night air seeped through the cracks, sending shivers down my spine. I had to know more about the secrets that lay hidden within these walls. Determined, I made my way to the back of the school, where I had heard Ethan's voice calling me. As I stepped into the darkened corridor, I could feel the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Shadows danced along the walls, their shapes twisting and turning under the flickering fluorescent lights. I could hardly breathe, a sense of foreboding wrapping around me like a vice. "There has to be something here," I told myself, my voice barely above a whisper. I needed to find that locked room Ethan had hinted at, a place where the truth could be unveiled. As I reached the end of the hallway, I noticed a door that looked different from the others. It was slightly ajar, the wood groaning softly as I pushed it open. Inside, the air was stale, thick with dust and memories long forgotten. My heart raced as I stepped into the room, the door creaking ominously behind me. Dim light streamed through a dirty window, illuminating a clutter of old furniture and boxes stacked haphazardly against the walls. Everything felt untouched, as if the room had been frozen in time. "Ethan, are you here?" I called out, my voice trembling. I half expected him to appear, his sad eyes watching me as I explored the remnants of his life. But the room remained silent, the only sound the soft rustle of my footsteps on the floor. I began to sift through the boxes, my fingers brushing against faded photographs and brittle papers. There was a sense of urgency in my movements, a desperate need to uncover the truth. I stumbled upon a box marked "Personal Belongings," and my heart skipped a beat. Inside, I found a collection of items that belonged to Ethan: a baseball glove, a worn-out notebook, and a small silver locket. As I opened the locket, a picture of Ethan smiling stared back at me. It was surreal to see him so full of life, so different from the sorrowful figure I had encountered. I felt a pang of sadness wash over me. "I'm so sorry, Ethan," I murmured, clutching the locket tightly. "I'll find a way to help you." Suddenly, a cold draft swept through the room, causing me to shiver. The lights flickered, and I felt a presence behind me. I turned quickly, my heart in my throat, but there was no one there, just the lingering shadows that seemed to mock my fear. "Get a grip, Sarah," I whispered to myself, shaking my head. "You're alone. Focus." I continued to rummage through the boxes, my hands trembling with anticipation. Then I found it, a small leather-bound diary tucked away in a corner. The cover was worn and cracked, but I could feel the weight of its contents pressing against my fingers. I hesitated for a moment, a sense of dread washing over me. What if it contained something I wasn't ready to face? But I couldn't turn back now. I opened the diary carefully, the pages yellowed with age. The first entry was dated just days before the tragic fire that claimed Ethan's life. My heart raced as I began to read. Asterisk. I can't shake this feeling of dread. The rivalry at school is getting out of hand. I overheard some guys talking about a plan that could go too far. I don't want anyone to get hurt, but it's like no one listens to me. Asterisk. I felt a chill run down my spine as I read Ethan's words, the weight of his fears resonating with me. He was trying to warn them, trying to prevent the chaos that would ultimately lead to his demise. My fingers trembled as I flipped through more pages, desperate to uncover the truth. Asterisk. Things are getting worse. I don't know who to trust anymore. I just want to go back to the way things were. But I can't shake the feeling that something terrible is going to happen. Asterisk. With each entry, my heart grew heavier. Ethan's anguish was palpable, and I felt an overwhelming urge to reach out to him, to let him know that he wasn't alone. I had to finish reading to understand what had happened that fateful night. Asterisk. Last night was the worst. It got out of control. I can't believe I let myself get caught up in it. We were just supposed to have fun, but now it feels like we're playing with fire. Literally. I need to talk to someone to make sense of this chaos. Asterisk. I could almost hear Ethan's voice echoing in my mind, the desperate plea for help hanging thick in the air. It was as if the walls of the room were closing in around me, suffocating me with the weight of his memories. I pressed on, my resolve strengthening. Asterisk. I don't know if I can trust anyone anymore. Everyone is so wrapped up in their own drama that they don't see the danger. I just hope I can find a way to make things right before it's too late. Asterisk. The final entry sent a shiver down my spine. I could feel the weight of his despair, the burden he carried alone. It became clear to me that Ethan had been trapped in a web of secrets and lies, and now his spirit lingered, seeking justice for the wrongs that had been done to him. I closed the diary, my heart heavy with the knowledge I had gained. "Ethan, I won't let your story be forgotten," I promised aloud, the words echoing in the empty room. "I'll find a way to bring the truth to light, to make sure everyone knows what really happened." As I turned to leave, a sudden gust of wind swept through the room, slamming the door shut behind me. My heart raced as I spun around, feeling a chill run through my body. Shadows danced on the walls, and I could sense Ethan's presence growing stronger. "Ethan," I called out, my voice shaking. "Is that you?" The lights flickered again, and for a brief moment, I saw him, the outline of his figure standing by the window, his expression a mix of sorrow and gratitude. "Thank you for finding me," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the howling wind. I took a step closer, my heart pounding. "I'm here to help you. I need to understand what happened. I can't let your story fade away." His eyes reflected a deep sadness, but there was also a glimmer of hope. "You're brave, Sarah, but be careful. The truth isn't always easy to bear." "I can handle it," I replied, determination coursing through me. "I won't let fear control me. I want to know the truth." As I stood there, locked in a silent exchange with the ghost of Ethan, I felt a surge of courage. The weight of the past pressed down on me, but I knew that I had to face it head-on. If I was going to help him find peace, I had to confront the darkness that had haunted this school for far too long. "Thank you," Ethan said softly, his voice like a gentle breeze. "You're on the right path. Just remember, the truth will always come at a price." With that, his figure began to fade, the shadows swirling around him. Panic surged through me. "Wait, don't go." I reached out, my fingers brushing against the cold air where he had stood. But he was gone, leaving me alone in the dimly lit room. I felt a deep sense of loss, but also a renewed determination. I knew what I had to do. I had to find a way to uncover the truth, not just for Ethan, but for everyone who had been affected by the tragedy of that night. As I stepped out of the room, the weight of the diary pressed heavily in my hands. I could feel the echoes of Ethan's past resonating within me, fueling my resolve. I would bring his story to light no matter the cost. Taking a deep breath, I knew my journey was just beginning. The shadows of the school whispered secrets, and I was determined to uncover them all. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the trees outside, I sat on my bed, the weight of our recent discoveries pressing heavily on my chest. The air was thick with a mix of anticipation and dread. Lucas and Mia had left after our last argument, their faces twisted in frustration and disappointment. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on the brink of something monumental, but the tension between us was palpable. The diary Mia had found was a treasure trove of information, but it also felt like a curse. Ethan's words, filled with pain and longing, echoed in my mind as I stared at the wall, lost in thought. I could almost hear him whispering to me, urging me to seek justice for what had happened all those years ago. I had never been one to shy away from challenges, but this felt different. We were not just uncovering secrets. We were delving into the past, a past intertwined with guilt and betrayal. I picked up my phone, hesitating before dialing Mia's number. She had been distant since our last meeting, and I knew that reaching out might reopen old wounds, but I needed her. We all needed to come together if we were going to face the truth. After a few rings, her voice came through, cool and distant. "Sarah?" she answered, her tone already indicating her reluctance. "Mia, it's me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can we talk? I think we need to discuss the diary and everything else." There was a long pause, and I could almost visualize her weighing her options. "Fine. Where do you want to meet?" "The library," I replied, already picturing the dimly lit room filled with dusty books and the lingering scent of old paper. "Let's meet there in an hour." As I hung up, I felt a mix of relief and anxiety. The library had always been a refuge for me, a place where I could escape into the world of stories and imagination. But tonight, it would be a battleground for truths that had long been buried. When I arrived at the library, the familiar creak of the wooden floorboards greeted me, but it felt eerily quiet. I spotted Mia sitting at our usual table, her fingers nervously tapping on the surface. I took a deep breath and approached her, trying to mask my apprehension with a smile. "Hey," I said softly, sliding into the chair across from her. "Hey," she replied, avoiding my gaze. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. "I'm really sorry about what happened the other day," I started, feeling the weight of my words. "I didn't mean to make you feel sidelined. I felt so drawn to uncovering Ethan's story." "I get that," she said, finally looking up, "but it felt like you were more interested in chasing a ghost than in our friendship. You need to realize that this isn't just about Ethan. It's about us too." "I know," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I can't shake the feeling that there's something bigger at play here. We can't just ignore what happened." Mia sighed, her expression softening slightly. "You're right, we can't ignore it, but we need to be careful. The more we dig, the more we risk uncovering things that might hurt us." "Like what?" I pressed, my curiosity piqued. "Like the truth about who was really responsible for the fire," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "And what if that truth leads back to one of us?" A chill ran down my spine as her words hung in the air. "You mean?" I don't know, Sarah, she said, shaking her head, but we need to be prepared for anything. We might find out that someone we've trusted has a darker past. Just then, Lucas burst into the library, his eyes wide with urgency. You guys won't believe what I found, he exclaimed, barely catching his breath. I was going through some old yearbooks at the school, and I found a picture of Ethan. He was friends with Jake. My heart raced at the mention of Jake. He was one of the most popular guys in school, always surrounded by a group of admirers. But I had sensed something darker beneath his charm, a competitive edge that could easily turn vicious. And, Mia prompted, leaning in closer. There's more, Lucas continued, his excitement palpable. In that same yearbook, I found a picture of Jake with another guy, someone we've seen around. His name is Kyle, and he was in that group that had the rivalry with Ethan's friends. Wait, so you're saying Jake and Kyle were involved in this? I asked, my mind racing. They could know something about the fire. Exactly, Lucas said, his face lighting up. We need to talk to them. They're the key to understanding what really happened. Mia frowned, crossing her arms. But do we really want to involve them? What if they deny everything? What if they try to cover it up? We don't have a choice, I said, feeling a surge of determination. If we want to help Ethan, we need to confront them. It's the only way we can uncover the truth. Lucas nodded, and I could see the fire in his eyes. Let's do it. We can't back down now. As we gathered our thoughts, I felt a mix of fear and excitement. The stakes were higher than ever, and I knew that we were about to dive deeper into a past that held more secrets than we could ever have imagined. After a few minutes of strategizing, we made our way to Jake's house. The streetlights flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows on the pavement as we approached. I felt a knot in my stomach, wondering how Jake would react to our inquiries. Would he be defensive, aggressive, or would he finally open up about the truth? As we reached the door, Lucas knocked firmly, and we waited, hearts pounding. After a few moments, Jake answered, his expression shifting from surprise to suspicion as he recognized us. Hey, what do you guys want? He asked, crossing his arms defensively. Can we come in? I asked, my voice steady despite the anxiety churning inside me. We need to talk. Jake hesitated, glancing over his shoulder as if weighing his options. Finally, he stepped aside, allowing us to enter. The living room was cluttered with sports memorabilia and half-empty soda cans, a stark contrast to the tension in the air. What's this about? Jake asked, sinking into a chair while we remained standing. We found some old yearbooks, I said, trying to keep my tone casual, and we want to know more about what happened during the fire. Jake's demeanor shifted, his brow furrowing. Why would you want to dig up that stuff? It was a long time ago. Because it matters, Lucas interjected, leaning forward. People were hurt, and Ethan's spirit is still lingering. We need to understand the truth. Jake's expression hardened. What do you think you know? You think you can just waltz in here and start asking questions? You have no idea what you're getting into. Then help us understand, I urged, frustration boiling inside me. We're not here to accuse you. We just want to know the truth. For a moment, silence enveloped the room, thick with unspoken words. Finally, Jake exhaled sharply, his shoulders slumping. Fine, but this isn't going to be easy. We're ready, I assured him, my heart racing with anticipation. As Jake began to recount the events leading up to the fire, I could feel the tension in the room shift. His voice was low, filled with regret as he spoke about the rivalries and the reckless decisions that had spiraled out of control. He mentioned the night of the fire, how a simple prank had turned deadly when things got out of hand. There was a fight, Jake said, his eyes darkening. It got out of control. We never meant for anyone to get hurt. We thought it would be just a harmless scare. What do you mean? Mia pressed, her voice steady despite the tremor of emotion behind it. There were some kids from the rival group who had come to confront us, Jake explained. We thought it would be funny to set off some fireworks in the building, but things went horribly wrong. Someone knocked over a canister, and it caught fire. My stomach churned as I listened to his words. And Ethan? Was he there? Jake's expression twisted with guilt. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I didn't even know he was there until it was too late. He didn't make it out. The weight of his confession hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I could see the pain etched on his face, the realization of how a moment of foolishness had led to a tragedy that marred so many lives. Jake, you have to understand, I said, my voice trembling slightly. Ethan's spirit is still here, and he's looking for closure. We need to help him find peace. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of understanding in Jake's eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a wall of defensiveness. What do you want me to do? You think I can just fix this? It's too late. No, it's not too late, I insisted. You can help us uncover the truth. You owe it to Ethan and to everyone else who was affected by that night. The night was heavy with anticipation as Sarah, Lucas, and Mia gathered in the dimly lit school auditorium. The air buzzed with tension, a mix of fear and determination as they prepared to confront the past that had haunted their school for years. I could feel my heart racing in my chest, each beat echoing the weight of our mission. We were about to bring the truth to light, to help Ethan find peace. But the stakes were higher than any of us had imagined. Are you sure about this, Sarah? Lucas asked, glancing nervously at the empty seats that surrounded us. What if we're not ready for what happens next? I took a deep breath, steeling my resolve. We have to do this, Lucas. Ethan deserves justice, and we owe it to him to face what really happened. We can't keep running from the truth. Mia nodded, though her expression was fraught with worry. I just hope everyone comes. If they don't show up, it'll all be for nothing. I sent out a message to everyone involved in the rivalry, I reassured her. They need to hear this. We all need to face what happened that night. The clock ticked loudly in the silence, each second stretching into eternity. I could feel the weight of our secret pressing down on us, the revelations we had uncovered swirling in my mind like a storm. I thought of Ethan's sorrowful face, the way his eyes seemed to plead for understanding. He had been trapped in this cycle of pain for too long, and it was time for us to break it. As the minutes passed, the auditorium filled slowly, a mix of familiar faces and strangers. Jake arrived, shifting uncomfortably at the back, his guilt palpable. I caught his eye, and he averted his gaze, the burden of his past hanging heavy on his shoulders. I felt a pang of sympathy for him. He was just as much a victim of that night as Ethan, but he had the chance to make it right. Are you ready? Lucas asked, his voice low, pulling me from my thoughts. I nodded, my stomach knotting with nerves. I guess we just start, I said, stepping forward to the makeshift stage. The murmurs quieted as the crowd settled, all eyes on me. Thank you all for coming. We're here tonight to talk about something that has been haunting this school for far too long. It's not just about the fire. It's about the people involved and the pain that has lingered in our community. I glanced around the room, locking eyes with Mia and Lucas for support. They stood resolutely beside me, united in this mission. Many years ago, a tragedy occurred here. A fire that took the life of a young man named Ethan. We've spent time uncovering the truth behind that night. And what we've found is that there are unresolved issues that have kept Ethan's spirit trapped. The atmosphere in the auditorium shifted, a palpable tension hanging in the air. I continued, my voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside me. Some of you here tonight were involved in what happened. Some of you are still burdened with guilt over your actions. We need to confront these feelings, to acknowledge the impact of our past choices. Jake shifted uneasily in his seat, his expression a mix of shame and defiance. What do you know about it? He called out, his voice cutting through the silence. You think you can just waltz in here and make us all feel guilty? I held his gaze unflinching. This isn't about blame, Jake. It's about understanding. We can't change the past, but we can acknowledge it and find a way to move forward. Ethan deserves that. We all do. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to grow darker, as if the very walls were listening intently to our conversation. I could feel a chill in the air, a sign that Ethan's spirit was near, urging us on. Mia stepped forward, her voice softer but firm. We found a diary that belonged to Ethan. It details the events leading up to the fire and the friendships that soured. He wasn't just a victim. He was a person with hopes and dreams, just like all of us. As she spoke, I noticed a flicker of light in the corner of the room, a soft glow that danced like a candle flame. My heart raced as I recognized it. Ethan was here, urging us to continue. Ethan wants to be heard, I said, my voice rising with emotion. He wants us to understand what really happened that night, to bring the truth to light. But to do that, we need honesty from everyone who was involved. The crowd was silent, the weight of our words hanging heavily in the air. I could see the conflict on the faces of my classmates. Some were angry, others were remorseful. The ghosts of the past were rising to the surface, and we were all forced to confront them. Ethan was my friend, Jake finally admitted, his voice trembling. I never wanted anything bad to happen. It was a stupid prank that went too far. I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt. His confession hung heavily in the air, and I could see the guilt etched on his face. But it did hurt, didn't it? I replied gently. We all bear the scars of that night. It's time to face it together. More murmurs rippled through the audience, and I could feel the energy shifting. As if sensing the tension, the lights flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced across the walls. I glanced at Lucas and Mia, who nodded, encouraging me to keep going. We have to break this cycle of pain, I urged, my voice rising. We need to find a way to forgive ourselves and each other. Ethan deserves to be at peace, and we all deserve to let go of this burden. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the auditorium, extinguishing the small candles we had lit as a sign of remembrance. Gasps echoed in the room, and I felt a chill run down my spine. The presence of the spirits felt stronger now, as if they were calling out for recognition. Ethan, I whispered, my heart racing. If you're here, please show us a sign. In that moment, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. A figure began to materialize at the front of the room, luminous and ethereal. Ethan's spirit appeared, his eyes reflecting the sorrow and pain he had carried for so long. The room fell silent, entranced by his presence. Thank you for calling me, he said, his voice echoing softly through the auditorium. I've waited so long for someone to listen. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, overwhelmed by the beauty of this moment. Ethan, we're so sorry for what happened. We want to help you find peace. The spirit nodded slowly, his expression a mixture of gratitude and sadness. There are many who still carry guilt for that night. They need to understand that forgiveness is key to moving on. The crowd shifted, many faces now filled with remorse. I could see Jake's expression transform as he faced Ethan, the weight of his past finally breaking through the walls he had built around himself. I never wanted you to die, Jake choked out, tears streaming down his cheeks. I was foolish and reckless. I'm so sorry, Ethan. Ethan's gaze softened, and he stepped closer to Jake. I know, Jake. It was an accident, but it was also a moment of choice. We all made choices that night, and those choices led to my death. But I want you to know that you're not alone in your guilt. We can all help each other heal. I felt a wave of hope wash over me, the tension in the room beginning to dissolve. I turned to the audience, my voice steady. We all have to take responsibility for our actions, but we also have to forgive ourselves. It's time to let go of the pain and embrace the healing. As Ethan's spirit spoke, the air around us began to shimmer with a soft light, as if the walls themselves were responding to his words. I could sense the spirits of those who had been lost in the fire drawing closer, their energy mixing with Ethan's, creating a powerful atmosphere of forgiveness and acceptance. Let us remember that night not just as a tragedy, but as a turning point, I continued. We can honor Ethan's memory by ensuring that such a tragedy never happens again. We owe it to him and to ourselves. The murmurs grew louder, voices rising in agreement. I could see a shift in the room as people began to share their own stories, their own regrets, and their own hopes for the future. In that moment, I realized that we were no longer just a group of students caught in the past. We were a community coming together to heal, to understand, and to forgive. And in that unity, I felt a surge of strength. Strength that came from knowing we were not alone in our struggles. "Let's make a promise together," I said, feeling empowered. "Let's promise to always support one another, to lift each other up, and to learn from our mistakes. We can create a future where we honor Ethan's memory by fostering kindness and understanding." As the words left my lips, I could feel Ethan's spirit smiling down on us, his presence comforting and guiding. The collective energy in the room shifted to one of hope and possibility, and I knew that we were finally on the path to healing. The past was a heavy burden, but together, we could lighten its weight. Together, we could help Ethan find peace and ensure that his story was never forgotten. The air was thick with tension as I stood in the center of the dimly lit auditorium, flanked by Lucas and Mia. The weight of what we had uncovered hung heavily over us, a palpable mixture of fear and determination. The chairs creaked as the gathered crowd shifted restlessly, their expressions a blend of curiosity and apprehension. They were all here because of the secrets we had exposed. Some of them were even part of the tragedy that had claimed Ethan's life. I could feel Ethan's presence, like a cool breeze brushing against my skin. He had been there all along, a silent witness to our efforts, and now he stood before us as a spectral figure, his sorrowful eyes searching for something. Justice, perhaps, or closure. I took a deep breath, steadying my nerves. This was it. We had to confront the past, not just for Ethan, but for everyone who had been affected by that fateful night. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice quaking slightly. "We're here to talk about the tragedy that happened years ago and the truth that's been buried under layers of guilt and shame." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, and I noticed Jake, the boy who had been at the center of our investigation, shifting uneasily in his seat. My heart raced. This was the moment we had been building toward, a moment of reckoning. "Ethan deserves justice," I continued. "We've uncovered some things that might change the way you all see that night. We owe it to him and to ourselves to confront what really happened." Lucas stepped forward, his voice strong and unwavering. "We found Ethan's diary. It details the events leading up to the fire, and it paints a picture of a rivalry that spiraled out of control. Many of you were involved that night, and it's time to face those demons." Mia took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched a piece of paper filled with details about the fire. "Ethan's story is one of pain and betrayal, but it's also about the choices we make and the consequences that follow. You all have a part to play in this, and it's time to acknowledge it." I glanced at Ethan, whose form shimmered slightly, an ethereal glow that seemed to pulse with emotion. He was waiting for us to break the silence that had haunted him for so long. As I scanned the faces in the audience, I could see the guilt etched in some, while others appeared defensive. "You might not want to hear this," I said, "but the truth has a way of clawing its way to the surface, just like the flames that night." Jake's eyes darted toward the floor, his jaw clenched. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "It was just a prank. We thought it would be funny." "Funny," I echoed, my voice rising. "You thought it would be funny to play with fire? To put everyone's lives at risk?" The anger surged through me, a fierce tide that threatened to spill over. Ethan never got a chance to live his life. He died because of a prank. Your prank. Jake flinched, but anger flickered in his eyes. "You don't understand. I didn't start the fire. I just wanted to scare him." I took a step closer, feeling the energy in the room shift. "But you played your part in creating an atmosphere of fear and rivalry that led to his death. You need to own that." As the murmurs grew louder, Ethan's presence intensified. I could see his spectral form flicker, and I knew he was channeling all his emotions toward this confrontation. I reached out to him, hoping to provide some comfort, but there was nothing I could do to alleviate the pain that lingered in the air. "We all have to face the truth," I said, addressing the crowd again. "Ethan was one of us, a student, a friend, and he deserved better. We've all buried our heads in the sand for too long. It's time to acknowledge our past and speak the names of those who were involved. A girl in the back shouted, "But what about us?" We were scared too. We didn't know what would happen. Fear doesn't absolve you of responsibility. Mia shot back, her voice fierce. You can't hide behind that. We're all here to find a way to heal. But that starts with honesty. Ethan's presence shimmered, and I could feel the tension ripple through the room as he stepped forward. His gaze locked onto Jake. "You were part of my world," he said, his voice echoing with a haunting resonance. "You were my friend, and you let me down." Jake's face paled, and he looked like he might crumble under the weight of Ethan's words. "I never wanted this. I didn't know it would go so far." "Then it's time to start making amends," I said firmly. "You need to apologize, not just to Ethan, but to everyone affected by your actions. You need to own it." The air crackled with energy as Jake's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I'm so sorry. I wish I could take it back. I never meant for anyone to get hurt." A hush fell over the room, and I could sense the shift in the atmosphere. Ethan's form flickered, and I could see the conflict playing out on his face. "I need more than just words," he whispered, his voice filled with sorrow. "I need to know that you truly understand the weight of what you did." The crowd was silent, each person grappling with their own guilt and regret. I looked around, searching for a way to bring everyone together. This is about more than just Jake. It's about all of us. We've all played a role whether we realized it or not. We need to confront what happened that night and find a way to heal together. Ethan's gaze softened, and I could feel his presence begin to shift. "Forgiveness isn't easy," he said, his voice resonating with an ethereal quality. "But it's the only way to set me free." I turned to the crowd, my heart racing. We need to make a pact, a commitment to honesty, to support one another, and to ensure that something like this never happens again. We owe it to Ethan, to ourselves, and to the memory of those who were lost. A murmur of agreement swept through the room, and I felt a sense of unity starting to form, a fragile thread connecting us all. "Let's take a moment," I suggested, "to reflect on our actions and what we can do moving forward. We need to face our past to pave the way for a brighter future." As we stood in the silence, I could feel Ethan's energy intensifying, and I knew that we were on the brink of something monumental. "Together, we can break the cycle of pain," I said, my voice steady. "But it starts here with us." As the weight of our shared history began to lift, the air crackled with possibility. We were standing on the precipice of change, ready to confront the shadows of our past and step into the light of a new beginning. I could feel Ethan's presence growing stronger, a testament to the power of truth and redemption. In that moment, surrounded by the faces of those who had once been divided by rivalry and fear, I realized that we were no longer just a group of students. We were a community, bound by our shared experiences and our commitment to honor Ethan's memory. And as I looked into the eyes of my friends and the others gathered, I felt a renewed sense of hope. "Let's do this together," I said softly, my heart swelling with determination. For Ethan, for ourselves, and for everyone who has ever been affected by our actions. And with that, I knew we were ready to face whatever came next. The air was thick with tension as I stood in the middle of the school auditorium, the echoes of the past ringing in my ears. My heart raced, and a shiver ran down my spine as the realization hit me like a freight train. I was a direct descendant of one of the people responsible for the tragedy that had claimed Ethan's life. The weight of that knowledge was almost unbearable, like a leaden cloak draped over my shoulders, suffocating me. "Sarah," Mia's voice broke through my daze, pulling me back to the present. She stood beside me, her brow furrowed with concern. "Are you okay? You look pale." I stammered, struggling to find the right words. "I just realized something big." I could feel the eyes of the crowd on me, a mix of guilt and curiosity swirling in the air like a storm cloud. "It's about my family." Lucas stepped closer, his expression shifting from concern to confusion. "What do you mean? What's going on?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself as I fought against the fear that threatened to consume me. Ethan, he's not the only one who has been affected by this. I didn't want to believe it, but I've traced my family tree, and one of my ancestors was involved in the rivalry that led to the fire. The auditorium fell silent, the weight of my confession hanging heavily in the air. I could see the shock on their faces, the dawning realization that this wasn't just about Ethan anymore. It was about all of us. I never knew, I continued, my voice trembling. I never knew what my family had done. I've been so focused on fitting in, on being accepted, that I ignored my own history. Mia's eyes widened, and she took a step back as if the revelation were a physical blow. But that's not your fault, Sarah. You didn't choose your family. I know, I replied, my voice barely above a whisper, but it feels like I'm carrying the weight of their sins. How can I stand here and ask for forgiveness when I'm part of the problem? How can I help Ethan find peace when I'm linked to the pain he's endured? Lucas stepped forward, his demeanor shifting from confusion to determination. You're not responsible for what they did, Sarah, but you have the power to change the narrative, to make things right. I looked around at the crowd gathered in the auditorium, their faces a mix of grief, guilt, and curiosity. They had all been touched by this tragedy, whether directly or indirectly. I need to do this, I said, my voice gaining strength. For Ethan, for everyone who suffered that night. I owe it to him to confront this truth. Mia nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. You're brave, Sarah. I'll stand by you. We all will. I turned to the audience, my heart pounding as I prepared to confront my family's legacy. Listen, I began, my voice steadying. I know we're all here for different reasons, but we share a common bond, the pain of loss and regret. I've just discovered that I'm a descendant of someone involved in the fire that took Ethan's life. I can't change what happened, but I can face it head on. I can't be silent anymore. As I spoke, I could feel Ethan's presence growing stronger in the room. His spirit hovered nearby, a flicker of hope in his sad eyes. You've been so brave, Sarah, he seemed to say, even though his lips didn't move. Now, let's find closure together. Ethan deserves our honesty, I continued. He deserves to know that we're willing to face the truth, no matter how painful it is. If we want to help him find peace, we need to confront our own pasts and acknowledge the hurt we've caused. The air crackled with energy as I spoke, the spirits of those who had perished that night seeming to gather around us, their emotions swirling in the room like a tempest. I could feel their pain, their anger, but also a glimmer of hope. They were waiting for us to take that step, to confront our own actions and the impact they had on one another. Ethan, I called out, my voice breaking slightly. I'm so sorry for what happened to you, for everything you endured. You didn't deserve it. I wish I could change the past, but all I can do is stand here and say that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the role my family played in your suffering. As the words left my mouth, I felt a rush of energy sweep through the room. The air shifted, and I could sense that Ethan was listening, absorbing my apology. His spirit flickered, and for a moment, I thought I saw a hint of a smile on his spectral face. Thank you, his voice echoed in my mind, a soft whisper that felt like a warm embrace. Thank you for acknowledging the truth. The atmosphere began to change, the tension in the room softening as others started to step forward, encouraged by my admission. One by one, they began to share their own stories, their own regrets, their own pain. I was there that night, Jake said, his voice trembling as he stepped into the circle. I watched it all unfold, and I've carried that guilt ever since. I thought I could just forget, but I can't. I didn't know what was happening. Another student chimed in, his voice thick with emotion. I was just following along, too caught up in the rivalry. I never meant for anyone to get hurt. As more voices joined in, a collective catharsis began to unfold. The room filled with confessions, apologies, and tears. Each person was confronting their own part in the tragedy, and in doing so, they were also helping Ethan find the peace he so desperately needed. The spirits seemed to respond to our honesty. their presence growing lighter as the weight of unspoken truths began to lift. I could feel Ethan's spirit close by, a sense of relief washing over him as the truth was laid bare before us. "Let's do the ritual," I suggested, my heart pounding with anticipation. "It's time for us to collectively ask for forgiveness and let go of the burdens we've carried for too long." Mia and Lucas nodded, determination etched on their faces. We formed a circle, holding hands tightly as we prepared for the ritual. The energy in the room crackled with electricity, the spirits surrounding us, waiting for our next move. "Ethan," I called out, "we're here for you. We want to help you find peace. We want to make amends for the past." My voice wavered, but I pressed on. "We acknowledge our mistakes and ask for your forgiveness." As we recited the words of the ritual, the air shimmered with energy. I could feel Ethan's presence growing stronger, and the spirits of those who had been lost seemed to draw closer, their weight lifting as they began to find solace in our collective honesty. "Thank you," Ethan whispered, his voice clearer now, resonating through the room. "Thank you for seeing me, for understanding my pain. You've given me the strength to let go." With each word, a sense of peace enveloped the auditorium, washing over us like a gentle tide. The spirits began to shimmer, their forms becoming lighter, more ethereal. As the final words of the ritual echoed in the air, I felt a warmth enveloping me, a sense of closure that I had never anticipated. It was as if the weight of generations of guilt had been lifted from my shoulders, and in its place, a newfound strength emerged. "Ethan, it's time for you to find peace," I said, my voice steady now. "We will carry your memory with us, but it's time for you to move on." In that moment, I could see Ethan's spirit, no longer burdened by the weight of his past. He smiled, a radiant light surrounding him as he looked at each of us, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you, Sarah. Thank you all," he said, his voice a gentle breeze. "You've freed me." With that, he began to dissolve into a flurry of light, his spirit lifting into the air like a feather caught in the wind. The other spirits followed suit, their forms transforming into shimmering orbs of light, their energy merging with the atmosphere around us. As they ascended, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace wash over me. I had faced my family's legacy, embraced the truth, and found strength in vulnerability. I had helped Ethan find his way home, and in doing so, I had discovered my own path to healing. The auditorium was filled with a palpable sense of relief. We were no longer just a group of students tied together by a tragedy. We were a community united in our shared journey of forgiveness and acceptance. I turned to Mia and Lucas, tears glistening in my eyes. "We did it. We really did it." Mia squeezed my hand, a smile breaking through her tears. "We faced the darkness together, and we found light." Lucas nodded, his expression a mixture of pride and relief. "You were incredible, Sarah. You found the courage to confront the truth, and that's what made all the difference." As we stepped out of the auditorium, I felt lighter, almost as if I were walking on air. The weight of the past had been lifted, and in its place, a newfound sense of purpose emerged. I knew that I would carry Ethan's memory with me, not as a burden, but as a reminder.